I believe that we can protect this amazing planet and the people who live on it. And I'm not easily deterred, and I'm not easily defeated. But you might not know, I wasn't always this way. I didn't always have this degree of optimism about what is possible. As a kid, I loved being outside, and my early ideas about the environment were pretty practical. I have small town roots in Indiana and in Michigan, and I learned from family that landscapes should work for nature and for people. I didn't learn that a world without people was the ideal. But I was very worried that the people part was overwhelming the nature part, and I wanted to use science to make a difference. When I started as a PhD student in the 1990s, the sort of doom and gloom environmentalism was in its heyday, and I was 100% on board. At the time, my PhD advisor, Dr. Paul Ehrlich, he was one of conservation's greatest heroes. He is still my hero today. Paul built his scientific career with butterflies, and he introduced those butterflies to me. He taught me that butterflies are windows, little flying windows into the workings of nature and also into the destructive forces of humanity. And Paul took me to the Jasper Ridge Biological Preserve in Northern California, and he introduced me to this creature, this butterfly fluttering over the native serpentine grassland of Northern California. This is the bay checker spot butterfly. And like many endangered species, the checker spot was in big trouble. It was once much more widespread, but development and invasive plants had narrowed it to a much more limited portion of its original range. And Jasper Ridge and a few other locations were the last checker spot holdouts. And I was interested as a young student in a very new environmental threat called climate change. What could climate change do to a species like the checker spot? And the reason why that's interesting is because every year the checker spot butterfly is in a race against time. It has just a few weeks to get fat enough to make it through the winter on plants that are dying out each summer. And when it's hot or in dry years, those plants dry up faster and fewer caterpillars survive. When we have more climate change, we have more of those hot and dry years. And so learning this, we took the approach that every good scientist is supposed to take, and we wrote a paper, and we published it in a prominent journal called the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. And we said climate change has the potential to hasten the extinction of this rare butterfly. But I also was doing a bunch of experiments. And I found that the plant that these caterpillars are eating makes a big difference in their survivorship. And when those caterpillars can move on to a rarer but longer lasting plant species, they did better. And more of them survived. And when more caterpillars make it, you get more checker spots, and the population improves, does better. And this alternate host plant thing was an epiphany for me. That there were ways that we could help this checker spot withstand hot and dry conditions. And we could do that by promoting this other plant to increase its resiliency. So it wasn't necessarily doomed by climate change. We could take some action. Nowadays, that strategy of managing or manipulating a species' habitat to help make it more resilient to climate change is fairly well known. But back then, this little butterfly transformed my thinking about my role as a scientist for the environment. Working with that checker spot was the first step in my wanting to become a change agent, my wanting to put science to work. That strategy is not the despair, doom, and gloom. It's about having hope, but being practical about it. And that, to me, felt right. It felt good to that Midwestern upbringing that I had, and it felt like it could achieve some of the conservation that I wanted to bring about. I didn't want to just do science about how and why. I wanted to use science to change the world. Now, I'm going to bet that you don't all wake up in the morning and worry about what's happening with butterflies. They are small things, in fact. But here's what you might not know, that if you can understand how something works, even a little rare butterfly, that understanding can lead to big ideas about how to make a dire situation better, like reducing the risk of a species extinction under climate change. In fact, the only environmentalism worth my time and your time is one that goes big on solutions, one that takes solutions based in diligent research and people who work to implement those solutions at scale. I've come a long way since grad school. I've listened and I've learned a lot, and I now know not just the despair of that traditional environmentalism, but a practical hope. I now know the difference between understanding a problem you're facing and being paralyzed by it. I now know there are ways to build a better future. Now, you might all be thinking, but wait a minute, there are lots of problems. Climate change is just one of them. How in the world could we have this kind of practical hope? Shouldn't we fall into despair? I don't think we should. You shouldn't. I think we have the right tools and the right ingredients in our hands to have practical hope. Right here at the University of Minnesota, and the Institute on the Environment is a key ingredient in taking that positive, solutions-focused scholarship and education and putting it into practice. And in particular, what sets an IonE apart is people. Over the last decade, IonE has built something amazing. We have created an international reputation. You all have created an international reputation for yourselves and an extraordinary record of accomplishment in research, in education, in communications, in turning those ideas into solutions. And I could stand up here and I could tell you all of the great achievements. Even just the biggest ones would take me a while. But instead, I want to tell you the secret ingredient to all of those achievements, and that is the idea of the change agent. That it is about people transforming themselves and the world around them through knowledge and action. Change agents is what the world needs. Not just scientists sounding the alarm, and not just knowledge for knowledge's sake. The world needs smart and competent people who pursue important cutting-edge ideas, but they don't stop there. People who put ideas into action. And that is what the Institute on the Environment specializes in, creating agents for change. So I will tell you about 3 examples of our spectacular change agents. This is Andreas Penner. In 2015, Andreas he transferred from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire to the U, and he chose sustainability as his focal study subject. He became a student worker at IonE, and he was finding his niche, but something was missing. He had been studying music at Wisconsin, but had sacrificed that for a more practical subject here at the U. But one day at an IonE retreat, Andreas and a group of fellow students had a vision for how they could bring music and science together. And they came up with a student-run benefit concert idea, and they called it Sust Tunes. It takes place every year in the IonE atrium. And so Andreas discovered at IonE this magic in bringing the arts and sciences together to inspire and to inform. When he graduated, Andreas took a job with a friend of IonE called Effect Partners, which is a company that helps celebrities and other brands convey their sustainability message through design and art. Andreas is an IonE change agent. He transformed his own journey and enhanced the experiences of others. Last year, IonE launched a new program to support and grow sustainability teachers. In the middle of this first cohort is the University of Minnesota Duluth's Liz Hill. Yay! Liz is an engineering professor. She has a knack for chemistry, but a passion for water sustainability. And she had this idea that all people across the university who were working in sustainability education should be talking to one another and sharing ideas. So she used the Institute on the Environment to launch the first system-wide sustainability education summit. She was interviewed on the radio about this summit, and she said that sustainability can be integrated into any curriculum, and it's only limited by creativity. So Liz is an IonE change agent. She transformed our university to reach new heights in sustainability education. Maybe some of you will recognize these folks. Over the last 9 years, a team of IonE researchers have brought a revolutionary idea into the mainstream. Through peer-reviewed science, through cutting-edge software, talking to the media, working hand in glove with other world-class scientists and with NGOs, the Natural Capital Project has shown millions of people that ecosystems contribute to the economy and have real monetary value. The NatCap team are change agents. They transformed how the world values nature. And now those are just 3 examples among many. And like rare butterflies, examples can be small, but the idea of the change agent is big and powerful. And IonE has consistently attracted some of the brightest and best change agents. Probably the person sitting next to you is someone truly extraordinary. You should ask them. You all are change agents. So our goal for the next decade at IonE is to create thousands of more people just like Andreas and Liz and the NatCap team and all the other change agents in this room. We are building folks with practical hope and the skills to implement it so that they can transform themselves and the world around them. But this is important. We need to link those people together. I think the world is ready for a new environmental network for change. And that network can be rooted here in Minnesota. And it is true, I acknowledge, we face some enormous challenges. But if you look carefully, there are extraordinarily positive forces happening as well. The world is ready to be transformed in good ways. Cities and communities are becoming more aware of and more resilient in the face of climate change. Renewable energy is moving into the mainstream, and the global economy realizes that personal health and environmental health are inseparable. As our world rapidly changes, some structures we're used to are changing in profound ways, like taxis and department stores. Some of them are being replaced. The music and media industries are being turned upside down. Every sector is becoming more distributed, more nimble, and more networked. Those networks enable maximum creativity and innovation. Those networks are able to see the next thing coming. In fact, higher education is going to have to change too. Money is no longer handed out by the government the way it used to be. The public is demanding more engagement and transparency, And people, I'm sorry to say, are not standing by waiting for the next academic journal article. If we do not evolve and change, we will be replaced. Building stronger networks is the answer for universities. But here's the cool part, the good part. A network for change is exactly what IonE is. We are a distributed community of people with practical hope working together to drive innovation and see it implemented with any like-minded partner. And we are a microcosm and a laboratory for the university of the future. And this is my vision for our second decade, that we're going to create a sophisticated, networked army of change agents with a laser focus on solutions, people who work side by side with important decision makers on important issues. But we are going to do that bigger than before. We are going to build the world's leading network of environmental change agents. We are going to be the best, working with the best, and we're going to do it at scale. What if this network helped countless partners solve crucial sustainability problems quickly, and in so doing created hundreds of change agents outside the university? Why couldn't this network include PhD graduates and graduate students across the entire country, help them put their scholarship into practice? And we did that not just for the University of Minnesota, but for all universities. Why can't we have a network of change agents with practical hope on the scale of other industries that are transforming themselves and the entire world? We can, we will, and the Institute on the Environment will be at the center of it. So as an optimist, or at least someone who has become one, I can tell you catastrophe is not inevitable. Why is that? It is because the future lies in the choices we make, and the actions we take, the knowledge we use. I'm a Midwestern girl, from the fields of an Indiana farm to the assembly lines and the engineering ambitions of Detroit, to the promise of higher education in the land grants of the Big Ten. I've never abandoned the practical hope of a better world, and I'll be damned if I'm gonna stop now. Thank you. So, I invite all of you to join me in achieving this vision, a network, the world's leading network of change agents who create the planet that we all want. Thank you.